Now, the rest of the story. It was in the spring of 1922. Students began complaining about their postal service. Now, the University of Mississippi had its own United States Post Office right there on the campus. The students picked up and posted their own mail at that office. The problem was that the postmaster, and I'm using a word now I've never used on the air before, he was a jerk. And this is the rest of the story. Bill did not want the job in the first place. Friends convinced him he needed the job and pulled some strings, and Bill took a civil service exam. He passed somehow, became United States Postmaster for the University of Mississippi. One wonders how much of his personal history was recorded on his application, because Bill was a high school dropout, and a United States Army reject, and a college dropout, in that order. In fact, it was at Ole Miss that he managed to get accepted and where he failed to complete his freshman year. Now here he is back at age 24 in the non-academic position of campus postmaster. The solemn responsibility of being an employee of the United States government never really dawned on Bill, and he never really appreciated how easy the job was. Another postal employee transported the incoming and outgoing mail between the train station and the post office, and that left Bill with sorting the mail and selling stamps, and that was about it. And even that was too much for him. Too much for him. The earliest complaints were that it took Bill too long to begin sorting the incoming mail. There were often long lines of restless students outside the post office. And in even more direct ways, Bill was a public relations failure. His attitude toward post office patrons ranged from indifferent to hostile. Back there behind the window, he always seemed to be sitting down and then frequently engaged in reading a magazine which had been mailed to somebody else. One of the few times that he actually spoke, it was to say that he did not intend to be at the beck and call of every expletive deleted who had 2 cents to buy a stamp. And pretty soon, Bill was spending more and more time away from the post office. According to one reliable source, he used to walk around staring at trees as though studying each leaf. Brooding, of course, is what he was doing. And then the final indignity. It wasn't enough that he was slow in fulfilling what duties he had, that he was cold and sometimes even nasty to the patrons, that he neglected even the basic responsibility of staying on the post office premises. Bill actually began throwing away the mail. Throwing it away. Seriously. Students and faculty members could often be found rummaging through the post office trash cans in search of personal and official correspondence. And it took United States postal authorities almost 3 years to get rid of Bill. That he was not ultimately thrown in jail was credited to some government inspector with a sense of humor. Bill wound up shoveling coal at a Mississippi power plant, and he failed at that also. So he did the only thing that was left to do. He did the only thing there was left to do. He became an author and won the Pulitzer Prize. He won the Pulitzer Prize twice. The Mississippi postmaster who threw away the mail, was that William Faulkner? He was that William Faulkner. Only now you know the rest of the story.
And now, the rest of the story. I'm always amazed to learn what jobs some famous people had before they became famous. Danny DeVito was a hairdresser. Hugh Jackman worked as Coco the Clown at children's birthday parties. Christopher Walken was a lion tamer. And now you know William Faulkner was a postmaster. William Cuthbert Faulkner was born on September 25, 1897 in New Albany, Mississippi, and lived most of his life in Oxford, Mississippi. In this episode, Mr. Harvey explained that William Faulkner somehow became the postmaster at the University of Mississippi. He quipped, "One wonders how much personal history was recorded on his application." But he had help getting that job. You see, William's father, Murray Faulkner, was the business manager at the university. It was he, William's father, who was responsible for getting his son that job. But William was just not interested in the necessary tasks required for the job of postmaster. His mind wandered, as the minds of authors are often known to do. Let me give you a quick example. Joanne was another wannabe author. Many people mistook her lack of ambition and enthusiasm at work for laziness. She preferred to read books by Charles Dickens and J.R.R. Tolkien and to write her own stories, though none were deemed worthy of publishing. That was until she was stuck for hours on a delayed train. With nothing to do but think, in 4 hours she dreamed up a whole new world for characters with names such as Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley, and Harry Potter. You know Joanne is J.K. Rowling. In this episode, Mr. Harvey explained that it took 3 years for the post office to get rid of William, but it was William who got rid of the post office. His resignation letter says it all. As long as I live under the capitalistic system, I expect to have my life influenced by the demands of moneyed people. But I'll be damned if I propose to be at the beck and call of every itinerant scoundrel who has 2 cents to invest in a postage stamp. This, sir, is my resignation. Now, in a bit of irony, on August 3rd, 1987, 15 years after the former disgruntled postmaster's death, the U.S. Post Office issued a 22-cent stamp in honor of William Faulkner. But William Faulkner did not turn to writing as a last resort. Writing was his dream. William was a model student until he was about 9 or 10 years old. William became quiet and withdrawn. I was unable to determine what caused such a change in William, but it makes me wonder if this was when he began to daydream about writing and creating characters and worlds. It was around this time that he became interested in the family stories, many of which were about his great-grandfather, William Clark Faulkner, who survived being shot twice in an ambush while a soldier in the Mexican-American War, and who was a Confederate colonel during the Civil War. It was he, Colonel Faulkner, whom the famous William Faulkner was named after. Colonel Faulkner was put on trial for murder twice, acquitted both times, and the voters elected him to the Mississippi House of Representatives. Colonel Faulkner became a part owner of a railroad and was later murdered by his business partner. William, the writer, incorporated many of these stories about his great-grandfather in his own writings. When William was 17 years old, he showed some of his poetry. That's what he was writing at first, poetry. He showed some of his poetry to his mentor, Phil Stone. Phil, an attorney, was so impressed that he had his secretary type and submit William's writings to publishers. The publishers who bothered to respond at all sent rejection letters. And believe me, nothing can harm a writer's ambition and creativity like a rejection letter. William was attending Yale when World War I broke out. In 1918, William tried to join the U.S. Army, but was rejected. I was unable to determine the reason for his being rejected at a time when the Army would accept just about anyone. In July 1918, William joined the Royal Air Force in Canada. Now, up until 1918, the spelling of William's last name was Falkner. This spelling without the U was the way his last name had been spelled for generations. When he joined the RAF, the last name on his paperwork was spelled Faulkner, probably by clerical error. It is that spelling with the U that appears in all of his published works. William was never sent overseas and was honorably discharged in the following year when the war ended. After the war, he enrolled at the University of Mississippi with the intention to become a writer. He received a D in English. Now, a student who dreamed of writing made a D in English? Now, I can't judge him too harshly. The only class I ever made an F in college was history. Now I'm a historian. But to my defense, I took the same history class with a different teacher at the same university and made an A. Go figure. Anyway, shortly after receiving the D in English, William dropped out of college. It was then that he went through a plethora of jobs that he hated, including that as a postmaster. In 1925, he moved to one of my favorite cities on earth, New Orleans. He lived in this house at 624 Pirates Alley, just off Jackson Square in the French Quarter. William continued submitting his writing to publishers. Through a friend and fellow New Orleans author, Sherwood Anderson, William's manuscript for a fictional novel, originally called Soldier's Pay, was accepted for publication, but was published under the title Mayday. It was a commercial failure. Only about half of the 2,500 copies sold. First editions of Mayday now sell for around $35,000 each. Check your library, see if you have a copy. William continued to get his work published, but he was struggling financially. Then, to William's surprise, he was offered a job as a script writer for MGM Studios. Now, William was reluctant to accept the position within the film industry, but he was desperate for money. He took the job. So from 1932 to 1954, William worked on about 50 films. He wrote the screenplay based on Ernest Hemingway's novel, To Have and Have Not. The film was the first time Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart appeared in a film together. They fell in love on that film, which was released in 1944, and they married the following year. William also worked on another notable film which starred Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, the 1946 film, The Big Sleep. Now, it's hard to beat Bogart and Bacall. William also worked on films such as Today We Live, The Tarnished Angels, Submarine Patrol, Gunga Din, Land of the Pharaohs, and many more. In 1949, William Faulkner won the Nobel Prize in Literature for, this is a quote, his powerful and artistically unique contribution to the modern American novel. William was never comfortable with the fame that came with such recognition. William's 17-year-old daughter learned that her father had won the Nobel Prize, not at home, but by her school principal. William said in his very short acceptance speech,
I feel that this award was not made to me as a man, but to my work, a life's work in the agony and sweat of the human spirit, not for glory and least of all for profit, but to create out of the materials of the human spirit something which did not exist before. So this award is only mine in trust. It will not be difficult to find a dedication for the money part of it commensurate with the purpose and significance of its origin.
In 1954, he won the National Book Award for Fiction, and more importantly, the Pulitzer Prize for a novel that he'd worked on for a decade because he wanted it to be, as he said, the best work of my life and maybe of my time. Now that novel was called A Fable. In June 1962, William published his last novel, The Reivers. In the following month, on July the 6th, 1962, 64-year-old William Faulkner died from a heart attack. He was posthumously awarded his second Pulitzer Prize for The Reivers. William is only one of 4 authors who have won more than one Pulitzer Prize. I'm always fascinated by true stories of people who succeeded despite the odds. William's work was rejected numerous times, for years, but he never gave up. He kept trying until he succeeded. Many of us give up on our dreams too quickly. Imagine if every writer gave up after receiving rejection letters. We would not recognize some of the most famous names in literature, such as Charles Dickens, Agatha Christie, Ernest Hemingway, H.G. Wells, and even Dr. Seuss. So never give up on your dreams. Keep fighting, and one day you may succeed. I'm Brad Dison. Thanks for watching, and now you know the rest of the story.